Alright, so we finished up our outdoor hay feeder with a roof. I'm going to run through this and just give you guys an idea of the size that we built this one. Don't mind the pink vet wrap. I pulled a tendon or something in my thumb, so I didn't cut myself or anything, but this is all we had for ace bandage or whatever. It's vet wrap. So anyways, back to the feeder. So we decided to build one of these because we're going to be moving our bucks out into the pasture, and when we do that, we'd like to have just an outside feeder that we can throw hay in, and it has a small shelf on the bottom to capture all the hay that's wasted. We also threw a roof on it just so that, you know, I mean, we live in the Pacific Northwest, so it's always raining, and I thought the roof would help keep the hay dry. It's not necessarily going to keep the goats dry, but at least it'll keep the hay dry. Yeah. I searched through a lot of videos and I couldn't find any measurements. I've seen a lot of people build the feeders, but I couldn't find anybody that actually said you need to build it this size, this height, and this is what worked best for us. So I measured our goats a couple different times and in a couple different positions. Our bucks are a little bit bigger than our does, and our does are eating out of it right now, so it seems like it's a little bit high, but it's a pretty good size for our bucks. So we'll just go through from start to finish. I used on the bottom, I cut 2 rails that I used pressure treated wood. You could opt to not use pressure treated wood if you were concerned about your goats chewing on it. But the 2 basically kind of skids down here are pressure treated wood, and I made these 5 feet long. I wanted them to be a little bit longer, a little bit wider than the roof, so that it had some stability, so when the goats are jumping on it, they don't knock it over. I was really worried about that. And it's very stable. Then I built the uprights, which these are 5 feet also. Originally I did 6 foot, but it was a little bit too tall. So, and if you get the roof up too tall, you're gonna get driving rain in, and I thought the hay would get wet. So I kept this at 5 feet. This is adjustable for your this is adjustable for your goats. If you have a little bit bigger goats, maybe you don't have Nigerian dwarf goats, and you have something else, you could always raise the roof.
Nice.
It's got just a metal tin roof on there, and I cut this pitch at a 312. When I did the roof, I cut these boards, the rafters, the 2 rafters on each end, long enough so that I could put a piece of plywood up there. I didn't want to just put the tin up there because it's kind of flimsy and there's not a whole lot to screw to. These are 23 1/4 is what I measured those. And then I have a 1x4 at the end, which is 3/4 of an inch, which made my total span here 24 inches, so that I could use half of a sheet of plywood, cut it, and then it would be 2 foot on this side and 2 foot on that side, just to make the measurements easier and simpler. So overall width is 48. So from outside to outside is 48 inches. And so that's 2 foot by 48, and then 2 foot by 48 on that. You could probably go into your big box stores and have them cut all of the plywood for you. Cut 2 pieces at 2 foot by 4 foot. And then we'll go over the bottom section here in a second. So after I cut these skids, or long pieces here, at 5 foot, I determined the height that I wanted the tray to be about 18 inches off the ground. So the top of our feeding tray here is 18 inches from the ground. So what I then did is I made a tray that is 2 foot by 42 inches. And that fits inside of the 2 uprights. I used a 1/2 inch plywood bottom. I cut 4 pieces of wood that I had left over after cutting these 2 boards to 5 feet. You have just enough wood left over to make 4 18-inch uprights. So if you buy 2 2x4s, that's going to cover your bottom 2 and your 4 18-inch pieces. And then another 2x4 is going to do your frame for the tray. Then we got a panel, a horse panel. You could use a different panel, but we liked the 2 by 4 inch openings And I cut those panels down to 38 1/4 by 24. So 2 foot tall by 38 1/4, and that's where it worked out for the spacing on the openings, by the 2x4 openings. Then I built another frame just out of 2x2s, and that's only to secure the top of the panel down to. And then this frame is 16 by 42. So you make a 16 by 42 frame out of 2x2s, and then the opening is 13 by 39. And then I cut 2 triangles out of plywood for the end caps, so that the hay doesn't spill out the sides, and so that they can't fit their heads in there and get their heads stuck. To fasten this grate down, I used 2 fencing staples down at the bottom. You can kind of see them right there. So 1 on each side, and that was just so that the bottom didn't slide in and out. And then up at the top, I used some 1/4 inch like eyelets with a 1 inch screw right in the center of the 2x2, so I didn't split it. And that just holds this panel, so that when the goats jump up there and put their hooves on there, they can't push the panels in. Phase 2 of our roof feeder, covered feeder here, is going to be, I'm going to put a couple gutters on each side, and I'm going to plumb the gutters over to where the bucket hook is. It's not going to be a permanent thing, that way we can take the buckets off and move it around a little bit if we wanted to. But I think it'll be pretty handy, especially since we live in the Pacific Northwest and we get quite a bit of rain. So hopefully we won't have to fill the water buckets. If you'd like to build this particular hay feeder with a roof on it, the materials you're going to need to buy are 9 2x4 by 8 foot long standard 2x4s, 2 8 foot long 2x2s, a 1x4 8 foot long, 1 4x8 sheet of plywood, 1/2 inch is what I used, 2 panels cut to the length of 38 1/4 by 24. Your choice of roofing material, whether it be metal, shingles, plastic, corrugated roofing, just whatever type of roofing material you'd like to buy. In this case I used metal, but there's a lot of different roofing options out there. 3 inch Torx head deck screws, coated screws so that they won't rust, and a handful of galvanized fencing staples. Quarter inch cable clamps.
Okay. Mom's the camera.